Thanksgiving was always my favorite holiday. Maybe it was the idea of family coming together, or maybe it was just the food. I'll admit I've never been able to resist my mom's sweet potato casserole, but last Thanksgiving was different. It was the day everything changed for me. I wish I could say I was surprised, but I think I always saw it coming. My name is Madison Turner. I was 34 last November, a single mom to my 7-year-old son, Jamie. I'd always been the black sheep of the family, at least according to my dad. My parents' house in Charleston, South Carolina, was the picture of old American tradition. Big wraparound porch, heavy oak furniture, and family pictures from every year since 1982, lining the hallway, the kind of place that always smelled like cinnamon and pine. This time of year? Maybe that's why I kept going back even when it felt like I didn't belong. That Thanksgiving, the house was full. My brother Lucas and his wife Olivia had driven down from Charlotte bringing their twins, Amelia and Jack, who were 5 and already better at making a mess than any adults. I knew Mom had spent all morning fussing over the table, putting out her best china, and making sure everyone had a spot. The fireplace was crackling, the air thick with the smell of roasting turkey. But something was off. I felt it as soon as I walked in. There were tight smiles and glances, like everyone was waiting for a shoe to drop. We all sat down to dinner around 3 o'clock. Jamie was in his best collared shirt, but by the time we got through Grace, he had already managed to drop a blob of cranberry sauce on it. I couldn't help but smile. He always did his best, but he was still just a kid. I helped him get settled at the little card table off to the side. I took my seat beside Mom at the large table. The conversation was strained and awkward. Olivia spoke about the twins' soccer practice, and Lucas boasted about his recent promotion at the bank. Dad mostly grunted in response, his gaze fixed on his plate. I attempted to lighten the mood with a funny story about Jamie's latest escapade with a neighbor's dog, but no one laughed. Mom merely darted a nervous glance at Dad. The tension escalated with each passing minute. I tried to focus on Jamie, who was quietly playing with his toy truck under the table, rolling it back and forth on the rug. The twins were giggling at some private joke, while Lucas repeatedly checked his phone, likely looking at sports scores. I managed to tune out the discomfort, reminding myself that I'd been through worse. I could get through this too, but then it happened. My dad suddenly slammed his fist down on the table hard enough that the silverware rattled and Mom's wineglass tipped over, spilling red across the white tablecloth. The room went silent. My heart started pounding, but I stayed perfectly still. Dad stood up and glared right at me. "You are a disgrace, Madison. A single mom. Why can't you just get it together like everyone else?" His voice was louder than I'd ever heard it, echoing off the walls for a second. Nobody moved. Olivia's eyes went wide, and even Lucas looked uncomfortable. Jamie paused mid-play, sensing something was wrong, and looked up at me with those big brown eyes. I could feel the blood rush to my face, but I forced myself to breathe. It wasn't the first time Dad had lost his temper with me, but never in front of everyone like this. He kept going louder now, as if he wanted the neighbors to hear. "We gave you everything, and you just throw it away. You could have had a normal life, but you chose this. You embarrass us every time you walk through that door." I glanced at Mom, hoping for support, but she just looked down at her lap, twisting her napkin in her hands. No one said a word. Lucas opened his mouth as if to say something, but then closed it again, eyes fixed on his untouched mashed potatoes. I thought about all the times I'd helped them. The secret payments on their mortgage, the anonymous checks for Lucas's law school, the new car and Dad's driveway that he bragged about to his friends. None of them knew the truth. They all thought Dad's pension from his years at the power company paid for everything. It stung, but I realized I was done hiding. Dad's face turned rudder as he leaned in, pointing a shaking finger at me. "Get out. You're not welcome in this house anymore. Not until you fix your life and stop dragging this family down with you." I stood up, studying my voice. My hands were shaking, but I didn't let it show all right. I said quietly, there was nothing else to say. I looked at Jamie, who was starting to tear up, and gently scooped him into my arms. He clumped to me, confused and frightened, but I whispered in his ear that everything would be okay. I grabbed our coats from the hall closet, slipping his arms into his little puffy jacket, and picked up my purse. No one moved to stop me. No one said goodbye. As I walked out the front door, the cold November air hit my face. I walked down the porch steps, my heels clicking on the wood, and out to the car. I parked by the curb. Jamie was quiet, holding tight to his toy truck. I buckled him into his booster seat, took one last look at the house, and realized something strange. I wasn't sad. Not really. I felt free. They didn't know it, but the whole world they lived in was built on the money I earned. The house, the cars, even the food on the table. They all came from my work, from my $94 million empire that none of them had ever bothered to ask about for years. I let them believe I was a failure just because it was easier. But now, as I drove away from the only family I'd ever known, I felt a sense of relief. Thanksgiving was supposed to be about family. That day, I learned it was about finding the strength to walk away when family no longer feels like home. The truth is, my family never really knew me at all. Even when I lived under the same roof as them or visited for holidays and birthdays, I always felt like I was a stranger wearing a borrowed name. I could see it in the way my mother would glance at me when I laughed a little too loudly or told a story about my work. I saw it in my brother's awkward, forced questions, always polite. Curious to them, I was just the messy one, the mistake maker, the girl who never quite fit into the mold of what a Turner was supposed to be. I was the woman who came home with a baby, but no husband, the one with too many ideas and not enough explanations. But what my family didn't realize, or maybe didn't care to realize, was that every late-night email, every business call I took at odd hours, and all those suspicious trips to New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles were not escapes from responsibility. They were the building blocks of something extraordinary. I had learned to hide my ambition early, to tuck it away where nobody could criticize it or poke holes in it. My world was quiet from the outside, but inside, it buzzed with secret plans and endless energy. It all started 5 years ago in a tiny, drafty apartment on the edge of Denver. I was 29, newly single, a baby on the way, and just enough money in my account to pay rent for 2 more months. On a rainy Saturday, sitting at my kitchen table with a secondhand laptop and a notebook full of scribbles, I opened my first online business, a digital marketplace for independent American artists and designers. I named it Blue Harbor, inspired by a place I'd always dreamed of. I poured all my energy into making this dream a reality, teaching myself website design, writing product descriptions late into the night, and persuading local artists to let me represent their work. The first year was incredibly tough. Some days I barely earned enough for diapers and groceries. I'd work through the night, my fingers stiff on the keyboard, with Jamie sleeping in a crib by my desk. I learned to make every dollar stretch, doing tasks myself that most people would outsource. I watched YouTube tutorials on marketing, customer service, and taxes, and I made countless mistakes, but failure never deterred me. Going back to my old life did slowly. Things began to change. Words spread a popular lifestyle. Blog featured Blue Harbor, and suddenly orders poured in. I reinvested every cent I made, upgrading the website, hiring 2 part-time assistants, and expanding into custom home goods. Before long, I was fielding requests from New York and Los Angeles. Big retailers started reaching out, asking if I'd consider partnerships. I always negotiated, fiercely determined to keep control for once I trusted my instincts. Within 3 years, Blue Harbor was not just a passion project. It was a full-fledged empire. I signed deals with tech giants in America who wanted exclusive rights to some of our digital art prints for their offices. Fashion brands in Europe, especially in Paris and London, wanted to collaborate on capsule collections. I flew out to meetings in glass skyscrapers and old European townhouses, always pretending I was just another freelancer, never the boss. My net worth soared until last year. It reached $94 million, all in US dollars. Sometimes I'd stare at the bank statement, still half convinced it was a mistake. But I never changed my life surface. I kept my old SUV, wore jeans and cardigans, and still answered calls from my mom like I was a girl in her pajamas. I bought the family house in Charleston outright so my mother could stop worrying about the mortgage. But I did it quietly, letting her believe it was an anonymous benefactor for my dad's church group. I sent Lucas a check each month, enough to pay for his law school loans and then some, but always from a shell company, so he never questioned it. Even their trips to Paris, the one Lucas bragged about over Christmas, were paid for by me. My accountant handled it all, making sure no one would ever connect the dots. Looking back, Maybe I should have told them. Maybe it would have changed the way they saw me. But the truth is, none of them ever bothered to ask where the money came from. They just assumed Dad's old pension covered it, or that maybe Lucas had friends at the bank. I let them believe whatever they wanted, partly out of habit, partly because I was tired of being dismissed. That's why after that Thanksgiving, when I got home to my apartment, my real home, not the one full of judgment and secrets, I felt more angry than sad. Jamie was asleep in the back seat, his cheeks still streaked with tears from the chaos. I tucked him into bed, then sat down on my laptop, my hands steady for the first time all day. I opened my financial dashboard, scrolling through the dozens of transactions that propped up my family's lives. The mortgage payment for Charleston, the direct transfers to Lucas, the utilities and insurance for Mom, the maintenance bills for Fad's car. Their whole world was built on my work, my sacrifices, and yet I was still their biggest disappointment. I stared at the numbers for a long time, remembering every birthday I spent alone, every holiday dinner where I was the punchline. Slowly, I started to cancel things. I stopped the mortgage payments, turned off Lucas's automatic deposits, and ended the allowance Mom received. Each month I emailed my lawyer, instructing her to rescind access to the family trust. I called the bank and had Dad's card deactivated. My hands didn't shake once. It felt cold at first, but as I worked through the list, a new feeling grew inside me. Something like freedom. For years I'd been the silent benefactor, the invisible engine behind their lives. But I realized it was time to be visible, to live on my terms. No more free rides, no more silence. When I finished, I closed the laptop and looked around my quiet, sunlit living room. Jamie's shoes were by the door, his drawings taped to the fridge. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged somewhere right there in the life I had built myself. And I knew that whatever came next, I would face it with my head held high. I don't remember much about the flight to Honolulu, only that I booked at the minute. I finished cutting off my family's endless supply of money and support. I wanted a place where no one knew my name or my story. A place where the only thing anyone expected of me was to show up and breathe. I needed the ocean. I needed the sun. Most of all, I needed peace. The beach house was waiting for me like an old friend. I'd bought it 2 years ago, just after Blue Harbor really took off. Telling my family it was for business travel and pretending it was a modest little condo near the airport. In reality, it was nothing short of breathtaking. A modern glass front house right on the sand, with tall windows that opened up to the endless blue of the Pacific and floors that seemed to glow in the sunlight. Palm trees lined the edges of the property. Their fronds swayed gently in the ocean breeze. I had always dreamed of a home like this, serene, open, and utterly mine. Jamie was sleepy when we landed, his small head nodding against my shoulder as we rode from the airport. But when we arrived at the house and he saw the ocean, he lit up. "Like Christmas morning, Mom. There's sand right outside the door." He squealed. His joy was contagious for a while. I let myself just watch him, letting his excitement fill the space where my happiness used to be. He ran circles around the living room, threw open every door, and finally tumbled onto the back patio, where the beach stretched out in front of us, like an invitation. The first morning we woke to sunlight streaming through the glass. I brewed coffee and watched Jamie as he pressed his nose to the window, staring at the waves. "Can we go outside?" he asked, his voice small but hopeful. I nodded, still in my pajamas, and we carried our breakfast out to the deck. I wrapped myself in a blanket, eating toast, while Jamie dug his toes into the sand and started building his very first sand castle. No one was there to judge me for being in pajamas at 9 o'clock in the morning, or for letting my son get sandy. Before breakfast, there was just the soft kiss of the surf, the warmth of the sun, and Jamie's laughter echoing across the empty beach. Later that day, we walked along the shore, collecting shells and smooth stones. Jamie chased after seagulls, shrieking with delight every time they took flight. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something inside me unclench. I didn't have to perform. I didn't have to apologize. I didn't have to worry about anyone's expectations, but my own now and then. I caught myself smiling for no reason, and the feeling was so foreign that it made me laugh at night. After Jamie was asleep, his hair still smelling of salt and sunshine, I would sit on the balcony with a glass of wine. The air was thick with the scent of hibiscus and plumeria. and the ocean's endless song was a comfort I hadn't known I needed. I'd watch the sun sink into the water, painting the sky in purples and golds, and think about all the years I'd spent living for everyone but myself. I thought about the sacrifices I'd made, the nights I'd stayed up working, the moments I'd missed with Jamie, the pieces of myself I'd given away for the sake of keeping peace. But here in this house with nothing but the stars and the ocean to answer to, I began to remember who I was. Not just Jamie's mother, not just the family's scapegoat or the secret millionaire, but a woman with dreams and desires of her own. I started writing again, short stories and poems that had lived in my head for years. Dreams that I'd set aside while building my business and caring for my son. My laptop became my new companion after dark, the words spilling out of me like water. Some nights I wrote about heartbreak. Some nights I wrote about hope. I wrote about the girl I used to be and the woman I was becoming. As the days passed, I also began to think about how I could use my freedom to help others. I kept coming back to the that had haunted me since Jamie was born. The knowledge that there were millions of women out there just like me, struggling to raise children on their own, feeling ashamed and unsupported. I remembered the loneliness, the fear, the way the world seemed to close ranks against single mothers. I wanted to do something, anything to make it better for someone else. So one afternoon, with the sound of Jamie's laughter drifting in through the open door, I sat down and started sketching out a plan for a charity. I named my initiative Harbor of Hope, envisioning a sanctuary where single mothers could access support, resources, and encouragement free from judgment. I committed an initial fund of $1 million, confident it was enough to create sight change. My plans included launching various programs, emergency grants, legal aid, childcare support, and scholarships for continuing education. I began consulting with lawyers and financial advisors to ensure proper setup. Each decision felt incredibly empowering. My wealth was no longer merely aiding those who had exploited me. It was constructing something positive and enduring. The more I earned, the more enthusiastic I became. I could picture mothers and children who would never know my name, but who might have a little more hope because of what I had done. Jamie and I settled into our new rhythm: mornings on the beach, afternoons of exploring the island, or reading together on the porch, evenings full of laughter and easy conversation. The house filled with light and warmth in a way my childhood home never had. Sometimes I would pause and take it all in, the smell of the ocean, Jamie's hand in mine, the quiet certainty that for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The pain of Thanksgiving still lingered in my memory. But out here with the Pacific stretching endlessly before me, it felt far away. My family's voices faded with every crushing wave, replaced by the gentler, truer sound of my own. I realized I didn't need anyone's approval to feel whole. I only needed this: a little boy who loved me, a purpose I believed in, and the courage to finally live for myself. It was late afternoon when my phone rang. The sun was hanging low over the Pacific, painting my living room in gold and tangerine. Jamie was on the porch, his voice drifting through the open doors as he talked to the neighbor's golden retriever, his laughter bubbling into the salty air. For a while I considered not answering the call. The number flashed, Charleston, South Carolina, and I knew immediately that it was my mother. Part of me wanted to let it ring out, to hold on to the silence I'd earned so painfully. But old habits die hard, so I picked up. My mother's voice was thin and shaky, her southern accent thickening the way it always did when she was nervous or upset. "Madison, honey, we need help. The bank called. They say we are behind on the house payments. I don't know what happened. And your father, well, he's not taking it well." I let her words wash over me, steady and unmoved. For years, I would have panicked at a call like this, feeling like it was my duty to rescue them, to smooth over every problem before it became a crisis. But now something inside me had shifted. I sat down at the kitchen table and looked out at the ocean, breathing in the calm I had finally found. "Mom," I said, gently, "I need you to listen to me. Really listen." There was a pause. She must have heard the firmness in my voice, the absence of desperation. "I paid for everything. The house, the bills, even the cars you and Dad never knew. But for years I made it all possible. I did it because I love you, and because I wanted you to be safe. But after what happened on Thanksgiving, after what Dad said, after you all made me feel like an embarrassment, I stopped feeling the old ache in my chest. But I forced myself to keep going. I deserve better, Mom. I deserve respect. I won't let anyone treat me like a failure. After all, I sacrificed to secure this family's safety for so long. The only sound on the line was her quiet breathing. Then, very softly, she began to cry. Not loud, just those small, broken sobs I remembered from when she lost her mother years ago. "Oh, Madison," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. We didn't know. I swear to you if I'd known." I shook my head even though she couldn't see me. "That's just it, Mom. You never asked. You never wanted to know my story. It was always about how I didn't measure up. How I made things harder, even after everything I did. All the sacrifices. It was never enough to make you proud." My voice wavered for a moment, but I took a breath and studied it. "I forgive you, Mom, but things have to change. I'm not your mistake to hide anymore. I'm your daughter, and I'm proud of what I've done." She sniffled on the other end, her words tumbling out in a rush. "Madison, please let us make it right. Come home, your father. He regrets it. I know he does. He's just stubborn. You know how he is? And Lucas, well, he says he never wanted you to leave like that. We need you. I need you." I closed my eyes and listened to the ocean outside, thinking of all the years I'd spent trying to fit into a family that never saw me for who I was. The old Madison might have rushed to forgive, to forget to erase her pain for the sake of keeping everyone else comfortable. But I wasn't her anymore. I had found my peace, and I wasn't about to give it up. "Not even for a tearful apology, Mom," I said quietly. "I love you. I'll always care about you, but I can't go back to how things were. I can't pretend I don't have value just because it's easier for everyone else. If you and Dad want me in your lives, it has to be on different terms. I won't be your secret shame. I won't let anyone talk down to me in my own family ever again." She was quiet, and for a moment I wondered if she would hang up. But then she said, her voice soft and raw. "You're right, Madison. You're absolutely right. I want you to be happy. I want to know you. The real you. I don't want to lose you again." I felt tears sting my eyes, but they weren't sad tears. They were the kind you cry when you realize you're finally free. After we hung up, I sat for a long time, watching the sky turn from gold to indigo. I thought about everything that had brought me here. The nights spent building Blue Harbor from nothing. The years of silent giving, the pain of being misunderstood and cast out for so long. I had measured my worth by what I could do for others, by how small I could make myself, how invisible I could become. But now I saw the truth. Clearly my value wasn't in how much I gave or how quietly I endured. My value was in the life I had built, the child I was raising, the hope I was spreading to other women who needed it most. As the days passed, I kept in touch with my mother. Slowly, my relationship with my family began to change. It wasn't easy. My father sent a card. No grand apology, just a short note. "We miss you. We're proud." Even if we don't say it, it was more than I expected. Lucas called once, awkward, but genuine, asking about Jamie and telling me about a new case at work. There were no grand gestures, no sudden transformation, but something had shifted for the first time they saw me. Not just as the family's mistake, but as the strong, capable woman I had become back in Honolulu. I threw myself into my new life. Jamie and I continued our beachside adventures. Harbor of Hope launched its first grant program, and I started getting emails from mothers across America. Women I'd never met, telling me much it meant to have someone believe in them. My days were full, my heart finally at peace. In the quiet evenings after Jamie had fallen asleep, I often reflected on that particular Thanksgiving and the simple word, "All right," I had uttered as I left. This single word had been a turning point, altering everything. It became clear to me that sometimes freedom is just one "all right" away, a vow to oneself to never again diminish one's life for the comfort of others. And so, I now live authentically. Not as a source of disappointment for others, but as my own proud, imperfect, and extraordinary self. From my beach house in Honolulu, the ocean's whisper reassures me that I am enough. I finally believe it.